Hi, my name is Ken Davidian, and welcome to Organization Theory in Space, Season 2, where each week I provide a video which covers one chapter in the Oxford Handbook of Organizational Change and Innovation, second edition, edited by Marshall Scott Poole and Andy Van de Ven. This video covers Chapter 14 of the handbook, entitled Hedging, Organizational Responses to the Formulation, Implementation, and Enforcement of Government-Mandated Changes. In this video, we'll introduce the topic, show the process model of regulatory responses by organizations, then talk about the different phases of the model, including formation, implementation, and enforcement. We'll cover the many mandates and jurisdictions of regulations, the uncertainty it creates, and the hedging behavior that results. Let's get started. First, here's a diagram of the process model that you can find in the book. Governments strive to align organizational behavior with societal interests by formulating, implementing, and enforcing regulations to hold organizations accountable for their impacts on various stakeholders. However, as governments at different levels create multiple laws with inconsistent standards, organizations often face uncertainty in implementing these regulatory changes. To manage this uncertainty, organizations engage in hedging behavior, which includes both stonewalling and opportunism. Stonewalling allows organizations to buffer themselves from regulatory changes by using public relations, legal, and administrative processes, while opportunism involves embracing the regulations. This hedging behavior, inspired by financial market strategies, enables organizations to navigate the uncertain outcomes of government mandates. Administrators and courts modify regulations over time due to factors such as changes in scientific information, technical advancements, and social movement activities. Organizations can influence the implementation, enforcement, and amendment of laws through stonewalling or opportunistic behavior. Regulatory enactments often have unintended consequences that social movements and interest groups try to address. Regulatory ambiguity leads to cat and mouse games, where organizations may undermine regulatory intent. Courts often mediate post-enactment conflicts, and regulated organizations typically have the power to stall, deflect, or fight regulation. Some organizations may take advantage of regulatory mandates for their own benefit. As regulatory statutes are interpreted and reinterpreted, the regulatory process may restart. Organizations face a multitude of requirements from various regulatory domains, such as corporate governance, employee and customer treatment, and environmental impact. National, local, and international governmental regulatory bodies impose separate and often inconsistent requirements. Existing research tends to focus on single regulatory programs in isolation, neglecting the simultaneous impacts of different mandates across jurisdictions. To understand the diverse regulations faced by organizations in the US and worldwide, it's important to consider variations across states, provinces, and municipalities, as well as international codes and standards. Enforcement methods and levels also differ significantly. Organizations operating in the US encounter a complex array of global, national, and local regulatory enactments, as well as international frameworks that influence their behavior. First off, laws in the U.S. aim to protect shareholders, with legislation enacted in response to the 1929 stock market crash, the 2002 Sarbanes-Oxley Act, and varying state incorporation laws. Global differences exist to shareholder protection approaches among Anglo-Saxon, European, and Asian nations. Regarding labor laws, the National Labor Relations Act, Fair Labor Standards Act, and Occupational Safety and Health Act protect employees in the US, while labor protection laws are stronger in Germany and much of Europe, where employee termination is more difficult. Consumer protection laws, such as antitrust laws, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the Food and Drug Administration, the Truth in Lending Act, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, aim to safeguard consumers in the US, while other nations have their own regulations globally. Since the 1970s, the US Congress has addressed environmental issues through the establishment of the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and various national laws, but organizations have evaded full compliance by exploiting differences in laws, resisting implementation, seeking pollution havens, and moving facilities outside the U.S. Regulation of carbon emissions occurs at various levels, including supranational, national, and subnational, creating a patchwork of climate-related regulations throughout the world and offering organizations some flexibility, but making organizational change difficult. The uneven development of regulations creates a significant amount of uncertainty for organizations, making it difficult for them to plan and commit to a course of action. Neoclassical economic theory assumes that accurate predictions about price, demand, technology, and supply are possible. But with so much uncertainty, it becomes challenging to make accurate predictions about the future. Regulatory uncertainty exacerbates other types of uncertainty, such as state, effect, and response. As a result, organizations may rely less on rational and analytical decision-making, and other factors, such as organizational politics and imitation of rivals, may influence their decisions. Some organizations may choose to drift and let the regulation process take its course without an active response, while others may delay their response and observe what other organizations are doing before making a decision. Anticipating how organizations respond depends on many internal and external factors, and organizations also assess their political acumen and the extent to which they can influence politicians, administrators, and the courts. In the face of regulatory uncertainty, organizations often hedge their bets by pursuing multiple responses, drawing on options theory to reduce downside risk and access upside opportunity. Greater slack can facilitate adaptability as organizations launch exploratory endeavors alongside exploitative activities, a phenomenon referred to as ambidexterity. Coping methods for dealing with contradictory tendencies include accepting them, dividing them among organizational units, and emphasizing alternative tendencies at different moments. A spiral model of paradoxical learning in response to regulatory uncertainty proposes a positive convergence, but unintended consequences can initiate action cycles that escalate and result in regulatory breakdowns. Two possible cycles include a vicious cycle in which poor performance leads to increased supervision, and a benevolent cycle in which good performance leads to autonomy and creative changes to government requirements. A neutral result is also possible. So, this chapter discusses the challenges organizations face when dealing with multiple regulatory programs, the uncertain effects they have, and provides a model of an ongoing process that describes organizational responses to externally regulated change. These mandates come from many different governmental jurisdictions at the national, subnational, and supranational levels, resulting in differences in how they are formulated, implemented, and enforced, creating inconsistencies and contradictions that do not provide organizations with consistent and sufficient guidance. This wide variation of regulation leads to uncertainty, and the responses to this mix of mandates can vary widely among organizations. The aggregate impact of diverse external regulatory pressures leads to a dynamic process where organizations hedge their bets, meaning they engage in both stonewalling and opportunism simultaneously, responding defensively by opposing regulations or proactively by innovating in order to benefit from regulations. Well, that's it for Chapter 14 of Organization Theory in Space. I hope you enjoyed the content, and if you did, I hope you consider subscribing so that you don't miss any of the future videos as they are released. Thanks! OT in Space was produced by IRL, which stands for Impossible Research LLC. IRL conducts process research on the topics of innovation and industry emergence within the space sector context. IRL also offers services of organization theory consulting, research consulting, and STEAM outreach. This video is intended for educational purposes only.